Internationals. Wow. I feel for you. What was it? 93, I think, was the
Mm-mm.
acceptance this year. So yeah, that is I mean it's better than last year, but they were also I found well, I think mostly everyone's here, so yeah, we can check. Um, just to kind of recap for everyone, I'm sure everyone is maybe feeling this who, particularly who applied last year, but I found that they were extremely tough marking this year, except on a few areas, which is weird to me. But I found that the storyboard in particular was very, very hard marked. I don't know, like there's some of them that they lost like half marks, and I didn't think they were that bad. So I it was weird this year. There were some other things, but definitely like looking through a bunch of the work tonight, actually, I do have we have a whole bunch here. Thanks for everyone for submitting work, by the way. There are some little things, but I think they were maybe a little bit extra harsh on those little things that there were. Um, so obviously, I think I sent out an email earlier, but yeah, layouts I found for the most part were marked harder too. Um, yeah, so I just wanted to mention that I'm not going to be able to get through everyone's work tonight. I sent out an email earlier about this. It's going to be a little tricky, but I'm gonna kind of I've picked a bunch that I thought would encapsulate probably many. So yeah, and also if anyone has specific questions, you can do the little raise hand thing. That actually helps a lot because I can see all of your names on my kind of screen over here. So if you raise your hand, I actually will see it. So I hope, and I think it makes a little ding too. Yeah, and this is going to be uploaded to YouTube too, Kona. So you'll be able to watch it later as well. So just, fair warning to everyone. But honestly, like have no concern about your work being reviewed. This is absolutely part of this, right? Like if you want to improve, you're going to get used to this, whether it's in front of a class of 30 or online with 15 or 20 people. It's just a very common thing to get around. In first year in life drawing, there's quarterly sort of check-ins with the teacher to like hand in your best work, and he goes through it, and then you pick your best five, and those you submit for each quarter of the year. And oh boy, it's just so brutal. And he's like marking it publicly. It's like everyone else is just life drawing like normal. They're like in the big kind of circular class. And then one person is just being like ripped apart, and we're all like supposed to just keep drawing. And then some people are not. And that difference is part of the thickening of skin that occurs either very quickly if you just scoot in and you're feeling weaker in certain areas, or just over time once you get into the industry, there's always something to tear the Band-Aid off. So nonetheless, I think getting your work critiqued is just generally a great practice. So um, okay, I'm just gonna get started. I have a whole bunch of work here, and I'm gonna need to bring some of it in because I didn't bring everyone's work in prior because I didn't know how fast I'd be able to get through things. Okay, so again, just let me know when you'd like to ask questions, or like raise your hand. Raise your hand. That's a good way. And I will be kind of like late and late looking at the chats a little bit, so I'll try to keep that open too. Okay, 1 second. I just got to get my screens arranged. I'm Garth, by the way, for those that don't know me, but probably most of you do. I'm active in the Discords. Okay, so I brought just a few in to begin with. Let's see, Sal, you're here. Is Donia here?
Donia, yeah.
Donia. Okay,
Mhm.
great. Wonderful. Okay, well, I have your works up, and I'm gonna bring a lot more. So hopefully most of the people who are on this list are here. Yeah, okay, let's go. So I brought your score sheets in here. I hope that's okay. It does help me to kind of look at it with context. So yeah. All right. So you submitted a few. Actually, you know what, Sal, you mentioned a couple others too. So let's or sorry, there's just the animation. There it is. Yeah, you had the animation. And the hand was a quick one. So I'll mention this right off the bat. So this is something that comes up a lot. But usually it's actually the reverse. So what happens? So Salad, did you use a photograph for drawing your hand? Probably most people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So, um, yeah. So the trick with that, I'm down with this as long as you cover your tracks and you make it not super obvious. But the problem is sometimes photos give themselves away, and I'm going to show you how. So especially when you're using a cell phones are the kind of the worst for this, um, because sorry, I'm also just opening the participants in case anyone else comes in. I officially have like 13,000 windows open here. So yeah, with the hand in particular, what people usually do is they pose their hand and then they take a picture um, fairly close. And the closeness is kind of the problem, especially if you're using a cell phone, because what will happen is a cell phone is a very it's kind of like a wide angle lens. It's not really, but it has that effect where things that are closer get a little bit closer than usual, and things that are a little bit further away feel much further away. So what it tends to do is it gives you slightly distorted perspective. Um, and so what I see, I mean, aside from just the cleanup, I feel like this could have been cleaned up quite a bit. Like
Hmm.
it feels just a little speedy in some of your lines, and they don't love that. They don't love to see like that it could have any time they see like, oh, this was done quickly. That's not great. Except for talking about the gesture. The gesture, obviously, that's fine. But everything else, it should have a sort of simple elegance to it. You'll see in some of the top portfolios that that sense will absolutely be present. This kind of simple elegance. So kind of keep that in your mind. But the other thing is, like when I look at my fingers, and I look at like the difference of size of my index to my pinky. Now look at this. So I see this is a pretty extreme range, and this is why I wondered about the picture situation because sometimes pictures do sort of lie a little bit. And I see a huge variation between like especially the length of the middle finger and index to that pinky. It's pretty extreme. So I feel like some of the sizes, yeah, that's one thing. The other is that the way that you put this crease that goes all the way down to the thumb, um, yeah, I don't like there could be a lot more structure in that thumb. I know that it's kind of back there and you kind of have to reach for the structure, but there is structure to be found there. And I feel like that's something that could be improved a little bit too. Um,
Mm.
I don't mind the fingers. I like how you're emphasizing the knuckles. Again, like the line quality could just it with clear line quality, you could make it slightly more obvious that these lines are kind of curving into the finger a little bit. I think any chance you could, like you did up here, this is wonderful. See, this is great structure right there. See that how the creases gradually fold over and kind of attach to the next. That's great. So yeah, there's just a few things there, but I think mostly it's the size of the different fingers. Um, and okay, the index finger there. Look at the thickness of the index finger versus the thickness of the middle finger. It's pretty stark, and those are
Mm-mm.
pretty similar typically. So, I do like how though that you have each of the fingers. None of them are totally static. Like the worst thing you could do is do a pose like this and have all the fingers just like that. That's super boring. At least, if anything, have a gradation of sort of opening, I guess, of each of the fingers so that each finger is doing a slightly different thing. It's immediately more dynamic when you do that, right? So my index is the straightest, middle finger is a bit bent, ring finger is even more bent, etc. Right? So that you did that well. There is this kind of gradation. Tricky with graphite and shooting pictures inside is you're going to get some reflection, right? Some of this is kind of a little bit washed out. Um, so again, that combined with the line quality, they're going to be like, this could have been presented nicer. But oh, and the thumb's too small. And maybe the pinky's a little bulky here. It's almost like thicker than the middle finger. So yeah, some proportional things. Um, okay, your storyboard is something I want to touch on because I see this a lot. This is not just you by any stretch. So this shot, I want to talk about this shot. So um, I don't know. I'm curious if anyone else sees this right away. As soon as I see this, my alarm goes off. So this fox is not looking at that scene, basically. So this fox is
Yeah.
looking somewhere where I'm not using a white. Uh, it's doing something. Okay, one second. It's looking like way off screen over here, right? So to get a true back profile, um, here my quick and dirty way of showing this is just grabbing this and kind of doing a slight angle change here to get it a little bit more. But the real thing is that we need to make it a back three-quarter view, which means that that other fluff. So you can push this fluff, like the cheek fluff is what I'm referring to there. But ideally, we have a bit of a sense of where that other fluff is going, perhaps somewhere over there. That's a little bit high, but especially if we're like relatively at eye level. So this is an awkward pose. The back three-quarter view is a pain. You absolutely can do it though. In order to do it, you need to basically show that we're seeing well, it doesn't have to be equal, but in a true back three-quarter view, you're going to see equal parts back of the head as you are the side. This is a straight profile right now. So even by doing this a little bit, then it's like, okay, um, it's funny, even just not having drawn the fox for a few weeks, I'm already feeling rusty with them. But yeah, like pushing the other fluff out there, putting this one down here, something like that is how I've seen some people successfully tackle the three-quarter view. And then of course the ears need to imply this too. So we need one ear here, the other ear like somewhere like that. Remember, you need to sell the fact that this is like a three-dimensional um, character. So, and then that eye needs to be super compressed and kind of looking over there. Maybe bring the mouth back a little bit. So immediately, and also here's another trick. So if you leave that, overlap that with this here, you see how this what it does is it says this form is in front of that form now by just leaving the little tail edge there. It's so subtle, but that is structure nonetheless. It is a subtle thing. Um, so yeah, and also the ellipse, right? You did that kind of ellipse. Really, if it's facing away from us, even better to do that kind of ellipse. And we're not going to see the other side, but we know what it would look. So do you see how that immediately looks like he's actually looking at that scene? So that's one immediate thing that I saw. Um, I do love this story, by the way. I just need to say, like, that it's a fun. He's just like, um, yeah. I think you could have even. This is another thing. Okay, we need to talk about this. For some reason, anyone that brought money into their storyboard, there's probably a good bunch of you here. They didn't seem to like this very much. I don't know why. I think it's because like, my guess is that using money and like, oh, I'm out of money is like too symbolic. It's too like numbers and symbols and things like that. Yeah, maybe don't. Yeah. Um, it's not as like visual and like actiony. It's like, oh, I'm out of money. It's like it would have been better to do like I'm hungry because that's like a fox like thing, or just a more visually apparent thing. He could be sad for any reasons, but the money can only happen with like a wallet or like I had one student that did like counting coins or there's a lot of ways to show it, but it's still just like it's this very subtle, small human thing that we do is like so I don't know. That's my guess as to why, or maybe just so many people did it. They're like, oh, please, something different. So the hunger, like hands on stomach, stomach rumbling, looking like, oh, I'm so tired. Things like that could have helped sell that a little bit more, maybe. Or sorry, well, you're not doing that, but that would have been a way to do that. Love your final pose. What's not to like about this amazing final scene? The other thing is that you're kind of I feel like this is almost just a moment too late after it. Like I would have liked to see more because you have this kind of circular grill here, right? So it would have been great to see that circular grill flying somewhere. I know that I see the grills themselves, but we need that like iconic shape. That's mostly what we see in this scene, right? So that and then like the stool. I would have highlighted those things a lot more than some of the other things, just because that absolutely you could even have him here. Like, where is he in this? You could have had him, you could have pulled it out just a little wider and kind of added him to this shot. And he's like going kind of nuts here. He's like, whoa, what's happening? So something like that I think would have made it more clear. And rather than the wallet, I actually thought that was a book. He could have like taken one of these or grabbed maybe there's just like a rock here. That's another thing. The simpler the better. Sometimes like the simplest thing is the right one. I found so many of the best ones were actually or sorry, not the best. Like the highest marked ones were super simple in the concept. There's only a few that were quite complicated. Okay, and character stuff. So it's interesting. I like this character in certain areas. Like I like he's got an attitude, he's got a vibe going on, he's got a little story. Um, and some of this feels nice and fluid and like structural, but then something happens down here. It just feels like kind of stiff and a little dead. Um, it's suddenly super geometric. Rather than that, rather than being more graphic, it's almost, I found that most of the ones I saw did a little better if they were a little bit more clear about what exactly those graphic shapes are representing. So the more clear you can be with this, the better just to be absolutely sure that it's real. Even if like if you want to have a boxy kind of shoe, have a little edge, just the slightest little thing like that. I wouldn't do it too much though because it starts to look a bit robotic. But yeah, just little things like that can help. Doesn't need to be a lot of texture, just like a little bit to kind of because right now this is quite graphic and it's very simplified form. This even more so. It almost looks like you held shift and just went straight down. So yeah, I just don't see that too much. And also the width here is getting a little topsy-turvy in some spots. So just watch your widths, but mostly just like let's see more structure. But the funny thing is you totally did this up here. So you can do it. In most cases, I feel like this would have been better to kind of circle around. I know that you have the little fluffs here, but you can always kind of move things as you need. Um, so like yeah, how are we going to arrange this space? Something like that. So you're rounding it a little bit more. So it's not straight. You got to be, see, this is a little bit better, but you still have these moments where it just hits right to that, like a perpendicular mark. It's a little better to just like show that structure. What exactly is happening here? That's what's happening. How thick is this material? If it's nice and thin, sure, you can show that. You don't need to have a thick edge there. But that's a couple different ways of kind of doing that structure. You can even add an edge, but it's getting a little complicated there. So yeah, just a little more structure in different spots. He somehow loses his attitude here a little bit. I don't know exactly what's going on. His eyes smaller too. Um, I don't know. I feel like he's lost some of his oomph there. Um, so in back three quarter views, you can often get away with having an eye in there, honestly. Like, and it's kind of nice because if you think about like the animation director, it's kind of nice if you can use a back three quarter view. Um, and from this now you can see like how he's emoting from that view. So it's just like a functional and design, but yeah, just benefit, I guess. So something like that. But I like his little snootiness, and I try to maintain that. Okay, and then quickly, I just want to look at your animation because there's something there. This is just a speed thing. So it looks like probably unfortunately you guys aren't going to be able to see this live because this is on Zoom. Um, but there is some. You know what it feels like, Salad? It feels like you exported it in a slightly different frame rate or something, or you use Procreate, which tends to be a bit chaotic with how it exports. I've seen so many problems. But anyways, um, it it feels like you lost some frames right after the anticipation of the first well sorry of the first anticipation and it's jumping through the air because it really teleports. Maybe you just made it super fast, but it has you need at least well I would say two more frames of anticipation, one more frame in the air progressing before they get to the hang time moment of that jump. So yeah, like definitely you could use some more for I like the little story though. That's nice for sure. Yeah, here's the other thing. I've seen some very successful animations that like were above the frame rate that they give you. And just keep in mind that they say 48 images, right? That's 48 drawings. So most animation is animated on twos. So 48 drawings exposed to 2 frames each actually gives you 96 frames or 4 seconds. Probably a lot of you know that or maybe have figured it out, but that's a thing that a lot of people don't know from reading the requirements. Sal, do you have a question?
Yeah. Can is Zoom lagging or is that actually what you see? Like the choppy little
You know what?
thing.
I think there's a way to share this so that you can see it more optimized for video clip. Yeah, let's try that. So
Thank you.
let's see. I don't know if it's any better. Is it any better?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
There's
Okay,
just
okay.
like, yeah, it's just a little speedy, like right at, well, during and after the first anticipation. Super speedy. I would slow that down a lot. But you're not far off, and I think they were a little bit harsh with you here. Well, I don't know. I probably in previous years you probably would have gotten one more at least, but yeah, nonetheless, that's I'm just gonna share normally because I feel like a lot goes away when I do that. Okay. Anyways,
Thank you, thank you.
yeah, no problem. Okay, we'll keep moving. So we have Donia here.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, yeah. So this is one of the ones, Donia, that I look at your storyboard and I'm like, I like this story. I feel like you were robbed a little bit here, to be honest. I mean, there's a few little things like you could have set yourself up better from the pose in that panel to be the pose in this panel. Right now, there's a bit of a little twist and then fall that needs to occur. It probably would have been better to just like have the fox kind of like hanging here, just gripping it, and you could put this big uh branch here and just kind of have him in that same almost position, just with his feet kind of wrapped around and his tail tucked up here. Like have him just kind of like looking back. Sorry for this horrible drawing. I'm just trying to do it quickly. Yeah, he's just trying to like look back here and like see who's coming. I probably would have brought the camera a little closer too. Like this tree, it would have been great to have this tree like right in the foreground. Which is funny because the way that you've drawn it almost seems like it is. So that yeah, it's a similar it ends up being a somewhat similar composition, but now we're looking more up. The fox is here, and maybe the character's like just right back there. I do like the push beyond the horizon line of the immediate horizon line. That's good. But yeah, just a little closer and just that switch position. Um, yeah. I think you lost something here. It looks like it's supposed to be I see the problem is I thought that was a fly, but I see that clear that that's a little music note. That's kind of important. Um, yeah. Okay, you got a bit. What happened here? It's like the tree hit this and then the tail reacted to it or something. Yeah, the tail honestly has more bulk. It is quite. It has a real like yeah, and careful of making it too sharp too. It has a real shape to it, and it's quite thick, as are real foxes if you see them. Um, yeah, that isn't the case. It is just a kind of single bend like that. It doesn't really have bulk. Like the legs, this is an old cartoon style, remember? It has this real sharp kind of like, um, yeah, it's very like 50s kind of. Um, so yeah. Oh, okay. So we got another situation here of profile. So what I think happens is that if you stray a little too close to the poses they give you, okay, this one's not. That's good. That's more of a three-quarter. And then this one's good. Okay. So but yeah, like don't stray too close to those two poses they give you basically. Even with the mouth open. I know some people took that mouth open pose and like put that in their storyboard. Shoot, my chat is going and I haven't yeah. Um Yeah. So, um, yeah, I do like it, but yeah, again, like I was saying, this should be a back three-quarter view. So ideally, we should see sort of both fluffs somehow, and then the ears doing the back three-quarters-y sort of ears situation, just like we talked about in the other one. So this is kind of a same, and then you push that. But now, yeah, you're gonna have to rely on those hearts because the eye heart is gonna be very tight. You might be able to get one little one in there. Although, whose was it? I have a portfolio megalist that I've been keeping of everyone's. Um, oh, somebody had an incredible storyboard that it was the same idea with the let's see. No, shoot, that's an amazing one too. But oh well, I won't go through them. But yeah, basically the eyes were jumping out of the face like a Tex Avery cartoon from back in the day. And it was so good. So you could do that. You could like have something like that. That would be fun too. But nonetheless, it's fun as is. I also think the arm's a bit big. Um, yeah, I like this. I like that pose. A little too sharp. Just remember the fox, it's not really a sharp end. It's quite like if you look at the volumes throughout, it's quite thick throughout, right? So just I know it's pretty yeah, they're so fussy with this, right? So just any chance you can to not let them take off a mark. And, oh, and the other thing with the fox is if you notice, you can look carefully and see a lot of like curve, straight, 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 curve. So what I get from that is let's keep that same kind of style, right? So here you could have done one, one, two. Um, that's fine, but you could curve to one side or something. You've dealt with that really well. The face generally is really close. Like, yeah, and I like this character. But yeah, again, to 13 feels especially harsh, don't you? So I don't really know what's going on there. Okay, yeah. So here I do see a few things. So first of all, line quality right off the bat, especially if we look closely, it looks like you did this. If I'm to guess, it looks like you did this at way too low of a resolution file. I'm just gonna make everyone's lives easier here, and like hopefully your iPad, if you're doing in like if you're drawing on a iPad or something like that, it might have difficulty with this, but I would say most of your artwork should be at least at this resolution, which is 4K. Do not draw at 1080p. Nothing should be drawn at 1080p. 1080p is the end output resolution of animation when it goes to the t when it's on a screen, but nothing is drawn at that. Everything is doubled so that you can have leeway to zoom in and make things bigger if you need to. Because what it looks like is like you change the size of the face at some point, and then you didn't clean it up, and so you've got this blurry. That's the program chugging along, trying to kind of figure out what you want to do with the pixels, and yeah, it's not super pretty. And then you have like a scratchy line over here. The line quality is just a little all over the place. Um, and it's a little bit, so here's the thing with robots, everybody. I know there's a lot of robots. So ironically, if your robots look a little too robotic, this is not great. You got to be kind of careful with that. Because it's just so symmetrical, right? Like just like that's unfortunately kind of the opposite of what you want in animation. You want something a little more lively. So even if you're going to do a robot, your robot can have a great personality. You don't have to kind of have them be so like this is rigid. But I know, of course, it's a robot, it's rigid, but it's like, well, then don't make a rigid robot, like that's kind of how I would troubleshoot that. It would have been cool to have some accessories too, maybe. Great opportunity for those awesome retro antennas. Maybe the odd like little lip from one form to the next, because otherwise it's kind of a little tricky to see what's like, is this meant to be hair? Like if it's meant to be hair, you could almost make it a geometric representation of hair, but make it just obviously like that's what it's, meant to be, but it's just I don't know, something like that is a little more obvious. Like and okay, here's the other thing with a robot, the whole rigidity thing. Like you can still make the eyes and face do whatever you need. That happens all the time in animation where they like have a super rigid character and it has these rigid poses, but then it's like the expression quality of the face is still at 11, right? There's still so much room. So like you can still have a good amount of facial structure and still have it be a robot. So maybe we have like a big uh bag, but it's like kind of yeah, a constructed piece basically. But here, like sure, you could have the odd little wrinkle here and there. But you see how it's just a lot more structure now. Just without a whole lot of work, right? Like we're getting a lot more out of that eye. And then also like give them the eyebrows are super expressive, right? So like get the eyebrows get them to say something, you know? Um, then suddenly it's like, okay, she's a little spicy. We've got a little bit more personality going on. Um, it deneutralizes her, basically. I can't leave the robot metaphors here. Um, so this is an orthographic drawing, right? So that what that means is it's like an architectural drawing when you see like front, side, back, like with an architectural drawing, there isn't any perspective, right? That those are an orthographic drawing of like a house would look something like I do this demo all the time for my students, so apologize to those folks that are here that are my regulars. But um, that is an orthographic drawing of a house. That's not really how we see a house. We'd see it obviously in perspective. But an orthographic drawing lets you see sort of multiple views at once, and it's used a lot in like various designs. However, that's not what we want to do here. This is character design. So, having what is the nose doing? It's okay, it's just like a little pointy thing. So what I would probably recommend doing is the old animation cheat. This is the perfect example for this. It's always noses that usually this cheat is done for. You just do something like that. You grab that side nose profile, and just throw it like that. And then if you want to have a little design on the nose, sure, go for it. But that's way more symbolically correct for how the nose actually looks, right? As a designer, you need to kind of troubleshoot these areas that aren't going to allow it to look like that thing and kind of go from there. So again, with the whole asymmetry thing that I was talking about earlier, let's like let's kind of find ways to make it asymmetrical, right? So, just slight little bit because this is the eye that's like, I'm up to something. So let's have the whole face on that side be, I'm up to something, right? So suddenly we've got like a much stronger personality there than before, right? So you're not far off. It's just those little execution bits. Okay, here's another thing. This is another orthographic drawing of this. So interestingly, look at the feet. Feet are great. Look at that. They're in perspective. So why are we not seeing the plate in perspective? That currently is flat. This is clearly in some kind of grid. I can tell because the back is over there on that plane and the front is over here. So that means that if we were to draw the same thing for the plate, the whole ellipse thing, it would be I don't know exactly where the grid would be for this, but it needs to be in that perspective, which means that well, let's see. Just gonna get this all fired up before we're gonna use it later anyways. Um, don't worry about this. I'm gonna talk about this later, but just to do a real quick get up here. Ellipses drive everyone crazy, don't they? It's kind of nice to have a thing. There we go. So I don't know, something like that perhaps. And then I can just kind of shift this down, maybe make it a little bit smaller. Okay, something like that. And then great. Now you've got your little stand. You could do that manually if you wanted to. But that is now in perspective. So this happens a lot, this whole dynamic. It also see that this is in perspective. You've drawn the dress in perspective, so that's good. For the most part. Now it's sort of flattening out a little bit. This should really be doing that and that. So yeah. So just make sure that your character is actually in perspective. That's one of the biggest things that I see. Okay, just a couple more. Actually, well, okay. I think you had an animation too. So Donia, this is another one that I'm just like, okay, in the beginning, I'll just share my screen for the sake of optimizing for video clip, so it hopefully works a little better. Um, Okay. Yeah. So hopefully you guys can see that. The anticipation isn't really like an anticipation. It feels more like a bow. I would have compressed the actual body itself more, like have it like bend down so that what it might look like. So you get a pose that's something like this. So something like that, where it's really squashed. You see that? So if you squash it like that, and the funny thing is, once you do, you can also do a squash and bend. It's tricky, but absolutely you can do it. Where, you kind of have to something like that, and then it still needs to kind of expand outwards at the side a little bit more. Um, so yeah, you can do a bend forward and squash. You can crumple it. You can do a lot more with the form than I think you realize. Um, I'm gonna upload more this year because I've got so many more. But if you guys want to see an excellent example of how much you can contort a form of the objects, go to the bottom of my past student work here and check this video out. This is a wonderful one from a few years ago. Hopefully you can see this, but he really like brings this thing to its maximum like bendiness or like compression. Like if you look at some of the poses, like the perspective is just completely wild. But that is animation. This is like it's not so much a technical exercise, it's like a creative problem solving kind of exercise. So anyways, that's all I'll say about that for now. Okay, let's keep going. Let's see. Is Micah here?
Hello.
Great. Hey, Micah. Okay, let's see. Okay, pretty good overall. So perspective, you lost a couple marks on. So you have your interior and exterior here. Okay. Okay, I know exactly the problem in that one and in this one. Okay, so here's the thing, Micah. These are excellent layouts. Like everyone I think can probably see this. These are really nice, like really nice line quality. I can tell that you spent a lot of work like with all these story elements. Um, And wow, great storytelling in the foreground. Really nice. Here's the issue, is that how much of this composition is not layout and is characters? A lot, right? Like 50% in terms of like there's like physical space and then there's like emotional space. And this is like 75% of the emotional space of the scene is characters and character acting, character dynamics, which is excellent. But that's not what the assignment is, right? So I feel like if you I would make the characters no more than like a quarter of the composition, and that's generous. I like the characters are just there so that they can get a sense of the scale of a human in that environment. You're not creating a scene. This is more of like a keyframe drawing of like a actual production, like a moment of the story that we want to see. So that's and this is the problem with a lot of layouts. So I'm actually glad that we had this as an example because so many layouts like that, the layout's done amazingly well, and then the characters are just huge, or at least like a very significant part of the composition, and the marks are low. And I've seen this a lot. So just that it sucks because you did a great job here, but that is a thing. They really don't like that. They don't like when you're basically making it about like get this guy out of here. Maybe have like a little foot in the foreground and then show us all those trees. The trees are what we want to see in this, unfortunately. So and here too, right? This is a big character, and then the other thing is arguably a character, not exactly, but I'm guessing it was more this one you maybe lost marks on. But the layout itself is pretty good. There would be a more dynamic camera angle to show here. I know, which is completely useless information for you at this point, but like I would have, well, okay, here's another thing is that bring 3-point into your layouts more, everyone. I say this to everyone because almost no one does 3-point perspective. But like having like the camera a little higher, looking down at this scene, pretty great. Same with lower. See, you did it here actually. This is a very low angle shot. Sure. So you did it, but you can do that easier with nature, right? Try to do it with a geometric one too. If you had a slightly higher angle or even lower angle because the roof pipes are interesting, much more effective. Get that character smaller. Um, but overall, like, great. Great, great, great. You didn't do that badly on it, right? It was probably that they were probably just a little fussy with your character. Yeah, you only lost 2 marks. That could be it. Um, okay. Huh. It's a pretty dynamic character. Um, this is favoring the back a lot more. Like, it's a back 3/4 view, right? So that means that it's halfway. This feels not halfway. Like, yeah. Like if we look at how much of the back pocket we see right there, see that? How we just see a tiny little sliver. And then suddenly we see both almost as if we're looking at them straight on. And I'm aware that we're not. There's less of that edge than we see on this side, but still, this is like basically back view with a little side of side. So that's one thing. I love there's some great work here. How did you do on this? I'm so curious. 12. Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about. They're just out for blood this year. I don't know what's going on. I think that's a little bit harsh. This looks pretty good. So I'm just kind of doing a little check here, looking through volumes. If you don't mind saying, Micah, and you absolutely don't have to, but how is your GPA? Is that
My GPA is like really high. My lowest mark right now is a 90.
okay? So that's not a problem. I would have pushed this arm. This is another thing, by the way. You don't have to do this, but it does often lead to a better pose. You know how you get like an arm going out from the side, from the front view? When you get to the side, it gets a bit boring, right? Because it's just coming right to the viewer. It's a little easier to push it back more. Like it just is. Yeah, I know it's a little bit of a different pose, but it's forgivable. It's totally fine. Um, because otherwise you're dealing with this, right? All these things like where's the elbow? We can't tell. Much better to push it back and have it be a sort of similar pose to these, really. There's also, even from these two poses, I can't tell if that's going perfectly out to the side, or maybe the elbow's favoring the back a little bit more. So you could push it back there. But honestly, like this is tricky. I don't know why they were so harsh, other than the back. Well, yeah, again, I mentioned that, but your line quality's nice. Looks pretty good generally, Micah. I don't know. You had a, I mean, there's the element, but the design itself seems dynamic and good to me. So this is one of those ones that I just doesn't really make sense. Unless if anyone sees something glaringly obvious, then please mention. But I'm looking through this and I'm not seeing a whole lot of like issues, honestly. Um, there's maybe tiny little inconsistencies, but they're not that fussy actually with inconsistencies. It's usually just the design. Like so much of the mark, they don't mention this, but so much of the mark is just like the design itself. Like, do they like the design? And that's why it's hard sometimes to understand it because they have subjective opinions of that. They will try to be as objective as possible, but you can't not. It's design, it's art, we have preferences. So, but even still, I don't. This is a real mystery to me. This is like quite strong. Like I swear, in past years, this would have gotten perfect. So, um, harsh.
Do
That's all
you
I gotta
think
say about that.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Do you think maybe the tail was like weird in rotation? Because I was having trouble with that.
I mean, you did a great job of doing it though. Like how you drew the inside form of that as if we're seeing because it is sort of facing us. So sure, let's see the little inside ellipse of that. That's a very considerate for the viewer. Like a lot of artists wouldn't even bother with that. They just but and then you see a little bit of it there, like, holy, you really you made it as consistent as you possibly could. I don't, yeah, and then you did the same back here. This is weird. I don't know. I don't know, Micah. This is a great character design. They're wrong.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, we'll keep going. Kiona, I think you're here. I saw your name, right? Yeah, Kona. Is that you, Kona? I can't hear you. But I see that you're trying to speak. You can just type two if it's an issue. Okay. Oh, your mic is broken. Okay, let's see. So 84. So another pretty strong mark. I'm guessing we're going to look at your storyboard is probably one of them. Yep. So 16 out of 20. Let's have a look at that first. Um, okay. I, yeah, I don't love these generic forms in the foreground. I kind of see what you're going for. You want it to be just like vague figures, but then I probably would have blurred them or something. To have the outline and then no detail in the interior feels a little odd. Yeah, the second one is very cute, isn't it? You're missing like one line there. I feel like there should be one line. If you look at the design itself, it has a little line that connects it. The fluffs look very consistent. These fluffs don't have a point. They're all rounded. Some are pointier than others, but they're not actually pointed. Like, yeah, I can show you, but see? Sir, it's all soft. Everything is soft edged except for maybe the ends of his eyebrows. But nonetheless, getting really fussy here. I've looked at the fox like for 18 years. So I feel like I need to mention those things. Um, oops. This this isn't my favorite shot. And then this is dead on. Ugh. Okay, so here's the situation, Kona. You have two pretty much center framed shots of the fox. Not my favorite thing. Um, yeah. I like this. Your second shot is great. Your second shot is a sorry, I'm just reading a comment here. We talked about the character rotation with a similar pose in art fundamentals, and they said that sometimes tilting the pelvis makes it harder for the props to tell if the pose is consistent. I don't I don't think that's the issue. That's my opinion. Tilting the pelvis is a strategic thing for various characters. Like a big heavy set character will often have a tilted pelvis downward so that you can have the belly kind of like land on it on an angle. So um, thanks for trying to figure that out, Casey. Yeah. And props. But I've never seen a problem with props. I've seen props like be marked high. I've seen them marked low. It never seems to really be an issue. But definitely uh I don't know. With the neutral pose thing, you can have some asymmetry. I wouldn't do a crazy action pose, but you can have some asymmetry for sure. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if that's it, but nonetheless. Okay, continuing on. Your second pose is clearly the star here. Um, yeah, the third pose, like too much is the other characters, I guess I feel aren't being treated like fairly. That's how it feels. They're just like, oh, who cares about those guys? You have a bit of a weird texture density issue too, where like the fox is super dense, your second panel's dense. The stage itself is like very densely textured, but then everything else feels a bit general and vague and kind of like it feels a tad sped up or that you were speeding through it. I guess that's what it feels like to me. And then the center framing things is a little bit of a no-no. I would have maybe done that for your final one. I kind of like that being a center frame, but the first one, we don't really need that. We could have done that from a different angle. So, yeah, few different things to consider there. Um, how are your layouts? I see they're here too. 12. Wow. Okay. Okay. So line quality right off the bat, way too thick throughout. It's just, and you're getting this kind of digital. I don't love that. Like the digital strokiness, like fine, tight, like basically layouts that are ready for production. That's the way that you want to think about it. So just like very tight. And this I would so I don't know if this is a tree or a crack in the rock. I'm gonna guess it's a tree because it doesn't seem to flow with the rock itself. The tree tangents a little bit with the edge of the rock, unfortunately, which is why it almost seems like a crack. But also, I would never actually shade in anything black because that isn't that is this is thick enough to have a line around it. And if everything else has a line around it, then you're breaking your stylistic consistency to sort suddenly have this kind of black blobby thing. So I wouldn't probably do that. Uh, you could have done more. Like the mountains aren't bad. I would have liked to seen. They're very evenly textured throughout, which leaves us with just a slight feeling of blah when we see the whole thing. Like versus like intensely textured in this little area and then space, and then textured over here and then space, and then especially space as you go back. Not as much texture generally. I like the idea of the character. This is a great size of a character for a background. We can absolutely see them. It's a great pose. And yeah, it's dynamic. The ship feels distorted to me. It feels like you transformed it in a program. And so we're getting this really stretchy sort of feeling. Don't love that personally. That feels a bit I guess a little amateur-y. I hate that word, but nonetheless. And more splinters of the wood on the ground, more rocks around it, like more debris as if it's not just kind of floating in space and everything else is untouched. Like more like this thing has been here for a long time. Um, yeah, I would have pulled the shot out wider a little bit and moved that rock a little to the right and opened up the right side a little bit, but that's going to take a little more time to maneuver. So those are my thoughts there. Okay, wow. Look at those books. Somebody likes rendering books, as do I. Um, ah, yeah, okay. Foreground. Foreground is problematic. The reason, so you gotta like when you get your character height in there, you should move them around in the layout in the room. because what you would find very quickly, and I can tell this because of where the eye line is, like the eye line is very low. Like we're low in this shot, sort of looking up. Like you could have even done 3-point perspective and made the vertical lines converge a little bit, but yeah, it's just. Oh, we're definitely going to go over. Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to go to 8:30 for all of you folks, I guess. So yeah, this is a very super low table, and it doesn't look like it should be. Feels like more of an accident. So what I would have done in this case, Kona, is um, well, yeah, if you're going to do a low shot, then you're not going to see all these candles and books on a thing unless it's some kind of weird low pedestal thing. But again, this looks like it's a table, so it looks like a heavy table. So that's just a little awkward. If you want to see the stuff on tops of tables, lower the horizon line. Lower the horizon line, you'll see tables, stuff on tables much easier. This would probably be an easier layout to see from uh, a higher, wait, sorry. Yeah, a higher horizon line. So the camera being raised up a little bit, looking down would be a better situation than being like low looking up, but then there's this table here and pretending it's not low. Like that's the situation. Your detailing is wonderful. It's just the bones of this that need work. Um, yeah, very thick shelves too, just oddly thick. I would have pulled it out a little wider. Um, it just feels a tad bit claustrophobic. I'm feeling like it's just too just shoved in there. Um, but yeah, some nice detailing here. So yeah. Okay. And your last thing, how did you do on this? Character rotation, 12. Um, so here's the thing about dot eyes. Dot eyes aren't the best because it's almost like it's kind of a cop out in terms of like rendering the eye structure. Now, once you graduate from Sheridan, you can do dot eyes no problem. It's a stylistic convention, absolutely. Like so many cartoons have dot eyes, but dot eyes are hard to indicate the direction that they're looking. And so for animation, that's why they make the eyes big so that they don't. You can easily tell the direction of the eyes, even if there's a fast action, which often there is. So with tiny eyes and dot eyes, they're not the best for animation generally, better for comics. Um, Also, the feet are inconsistent in your three-quarter view, which should actually have less space between the feet, not more. It has more space. So those, yeah. In your plane, this foot seems like it should be back further. This one's odd too. Oh yeah, okay. So the legs are all over the place. This would take some time to rework. Um, I'd like to see a little bit of a reason why the dress is all puffed. Like, I think you could make the dress feel more belonging of like that shape. Like it could rest on her body differently. Right now, it almost feels like air is shooting up it or something. Um, if you pushed her butt out more and then made it go kind of straight down, and then arc the front legs differently, you could have basically had the dress just sit on that, and you would still get that beautiful rounded shape. So, yeah, a few things here, a few things for sure, but yeah, not too bad. The bow isn't really working for you here. It's just kind of confusing details. Okay, anyways, let's keep going. Is Charlotte still here? She is. Okay, wonderful. Right, Charlotte? You're here for maybe a little bit longer?
Hi, yeah, I'm still here.
Great. Okay. So your hand drawing, 7 out of 10. Let's see your landscape and storyboard. Landscape. Wow, 9 out of 15. Storyboard. Okay. Let's have a look at those layouts first. Um, okay, I remember this one. Yeah. I have a feeling this is the character's not too big actually. Um, Beautiful lines, first of all, like really fine line quality. That's great. Um, I would have done more with the interior of this greenhouse. Like right now, because what this would be the equivalent of if it wasn't inside of a greenhouse is a room with like two tables, like that's not there could be it could be a little bit more engaging, and also you're using 1-point perspective, I believe. So these are look parallel. I probably wouldn't use 1-point. I would throw 1-point perspective pretty much as soon as you get to Sheridan. 1 point is a convenient thing, but it doesn't really exist in nature unless you're standing at exactly the right place in a room, and it's really hard to kind of duplicate that. Um, it would have been beautiful actually to shoot this from up high, looking down, seeing the things in those greenhouses, even though they're maybe just starting to grow, and seeing a little bit more diversity of the raised beds. Maybe some racks, maybe some hanging stuff traveling around the top. But also we need to be careful with the amount of organic shapes in this versus geometric. So maybe there's some hanging planters from the roof or something. So basically more actual things in it, more examples where you can be like, look, I know how to do perspective. Here's a whole bunch of things in perspective. Some things that don't even go to according to the grid. Um, and maybe throw some foreground elements in. You kind of have that big flour sack type thing or soil sack, but um yeah, a lot of people throw like some kind of thing that isn't planted on the ground, like, or well, it is planted on the ground, but you just see a little corner of it or something. There'd probably be something nice to throw into the foreground here. Um, so yeah, but mostly the biggest thing is just more things. Like I would put more planters, more. I remember when I saw you, it was kind of like late in the game, and I'm like, what can I recommend that wouldn't be a huge amount of work? Because yeah, you've drawn like the greenhouse itself beautifully. It's just we need more examples where you can be like, look, I can make a room in perspective. Um, so yeah, okay, that's that. With this one, I guess so much of this one, I love the skeleton and the landscape itself, and I'm sure all of your points were due to those things because the landscapes, the gradually traversing backwards landscapes, is great. Oh, and the scale. I remember we talked about this. The scale of the vertebrae going back, um, makes the trees out of scale, right? Because like if we see these, this is a thing that happens a lot, and many people do this, where you have like a few trees and they're all similar in shape and stuff, and basically, what our mind does is it links those two things and says, okay, these two things are similar sizes. And so what happens is if we see a vertebrae up here on that tree, and then we see that tree back there, we expect if there's a vertebrae near that tree, like perhaps these little marshmallows back there, it would be a similar amount of scale difference. But what we're seeing is that the vertebrae back there is it's gotten so tiny. Whereas this tree is smaller, absolutely, but it's not as small as the vertebrae have gotten. So that it's scaling back a little bit too much. I guess it is a tail though. I'm just realizing that it's conceivable that they would be also reducing in size. It also would be great to have that planted perhaps in the water because it seems like it's kind of floating back there. I'm not sure what is or something else to prop it up right there. That would have been good too. Um, Also less sky. Like I would have, this is a great opportunity where you have this epic landscape to keep pushing it back further. We get some big mountains back there. So much of it is just sky. I love your like nature though. This is wonderful. I love the rocks, love the rock texture generally is working. I think I might have mentioned this during our critique, but the tree texture feels a little similar to the rocks. It almost feels like it could be made of the same kind of thing just because of how the bark weaves a little bit. Um, I actually, you know what? I was talking about the vertebrae so much. I think that tree should really be smaller, and that one definitely smaller. That should be almost a speck. Like, look how much further back that mountain feels back there. It feels like it's a much bigger scale change than what we're seeing. Um, yeah, again, all the foreground stuff is excellent. That's nice. It's just yeah, some of the clouds I think could be a little more cloudy. They feel a little bit drawn quickly. But yeah, some epic mountains in the background, maybe some more distant skeletons on far off mountains. That would have been great. But definitely the skeleton is drawn well, and the person like so much here is working. It's just yeah. Okay. Storyboard. I think I had to look at this a while back, but um, yeah. This could have been a more interesting shot. Actually, wait, let's see the full whole thing first. Yeah, so the story works. Like, and you got 15 out of 20. You got 75%. So the story absolutely works. I don't love the first shot. I feel like that could be more dynamic. Even like moving the camera a little bit to the front so we get kind of a front three-quarter view. It just usually, if you're shooting from the side, there should be a good reason to shoot from the side. Like the character's walking by something that we see in the background or something like that. Or they're walking towards someone else on the other side of the sidewalk and they're coming together gradually. Things like that are good reasons to shoot from a perfect profile view. But generally we don't, it's not the ideal view to kind of shoot that from. Um, I think his fingers are a little petite. I think they're just a little smaller than perhaps the foxes actually are. Um, Great attention to fluffs though. Your fluff vibe is strong here. That's great. Something about this feels slightly off character. I think this there's a it goes straight down and then out. It doesn't have a swoop like that. I like the mouth, but this also comes to a point down there. It's not as you've rounded things a little bit more, which is giving it a little bit more of just a slightly different vibe. So just to kind of look at the fox for a moment here. So he's a little sharper and a little squatter. If we look back to this, it's pretty close. It's pretty close. Ugh. But yeah, just some things are a little swoopier. See that middle line? You can see it right there. It hits a point and then out. And that's a very similar angle. And then the other point is right there, right down there. So something, it's not a huge deal though. And generally, I actually really like this shot. I think this is a great shot. The background feels a little lifeless. It feels a little bit bored. I would have moved that plant out of the way over here, just clear out the background a little bit. I mean, it's generally quite clear. It's just that if you're going to have something there, make it not interfere with the pose at all. Actually, that's really not an issue. I guess just what would counterbalance that, because there's so few things, my eye goes to that, you know? But if there were things over here, if there's a toaster, if there was a cupboard, things like that, then okay, wait, no problem. Um, yeah. Um, Same thing is kind of happening here where it's almost like there's a rubber band around the middle of the snout and it's pulling inwards a little bit. Um, so it could just be a little bit more, yeah, I see it a little differently. It doesn't quite feel like that same dynamic. It's like, yeah, see, it is swoopy here, but from the front view, it has kind of a point there because they've even had a little divot there. Um, the eyes feel a little odd here. I think one of the problems is that they're straight up and down. If you look at the fox's eyes carefully, there is an angle, right? That's kind of the axis. So if you draw them kind of like right beside each other like that, as if they're up and down, for some reason the vibe changes a little bit. Um, and it feels a little too vertical here. It feels like it needs to be squashed a little bit more. Um, okay. Yeah. That stuff is going well. I think I might have mentioned this in our review, but the cookie flying out of it feels a little odd. If anything, it should be swirling around, but because he's stirring, right? Or yeah. Well, either way, it just feels a little odd that it's kind of flying out. Um, and I love your last shot. That's wonderful. I still am getting a slight rubber bandy effect here where it feels like it's tightening a little bit too much. And I think the torso is definitely too long here. See the torso's, especially from the side, you can see it's not that long. You know, it's like well, you can pretty much measure that and what that would be on the head. The head is a little bit more significant here and the body less significant. I love this stuff though. That's a bit odd. You know, that sticks out because it has this different texture. Suddenly it's shaded in. If you shade in everything, um, a pupil. This is a closed eye, Danielle. So, oh, I see what you're saying, actually. That looks like the upper lid. Ah, interesting. I saw that as a closed eye, but I can see how you would see that as an open eye. Interesting. Maybe make that line incomplete right there. That would ensure that it feels like a lid rather than an open eyeball. The fingers feel a little human. I think the foxes are a little bit bulkier, a little bit less. Like look at that big hand. Funny thing, by the way, is that the fox has totally different sized hands. Has anyone noticed this? Like the character designer at Sheridan was a little lazy that day. But nonetheless, pick your favorite hand size and go with it. But either way, they'd be a little bit bigger. So that's a few things. Okay. Oh, I can't open these. I don't know. Don't know what they are. Um,
Sorry about that. I can try and put something else in the drive folder. That will help.
okay.
Like, try
Sure.
again. while you're doing that.
Yeah. I'll just keep going just because we only got 20 minutes. But is there Dana's here? I see her right there. Okay. 85. It's a lot of 84s tonight, or like 85, 86s. Okay, so let's see. So let's see. It was probably storyboard. Oh, wow, your storyboard is pretty good. I'm surprised you submitted that. I hope you submitted your layouts and maybe an observational. Yeah, okay. So I mean your storyboard is 17 out of 20. Ah, yeah. Okay. This perspective isn't great. Your detailing and your drawing ability is great, Dana. The perspective isn't great. There's two, yeah, how to explain this concisely. Basically, like the eye line, oh boy, this is a hard thing to explain. So there's too much floor is the long and short of this question. There's too much floor. Like because the eye line, if we measure out the points, I could just tell you though, the eye line is probably somewhere around here, right? So that is like that's where the eye line is. So that means that we're pretty low. If we see where how tall your person is here, the eye line itself, where the horizon line is going to indicate that, oh, we're looking at this room from a low angle. Um, this table does not look like we're looking at this room from a low angle. Yeah. I need more time with this one to fully extrapolate this. But what probably would have been easier and what it seemed like you really wanted to do is you wanted to have a higher angle shot. You wanted to see the things on top of the tables. So what probably you should have done is raised up the horizon line way up here, and then you have a great justification for seeing that much floor. Because if you don't, as it is currently, the scale, like the distance of this floor is much more dramatic than what you think. Do you see how like mystical and difficult to explain this is? This is because it's a in yeah, it is a tricky thing to explain. So like technically, I believe you that like this table is correct and all that, and the top of that little sofa thing is right, but it doesn't matter because that would be an extremely like low table, right? Because we're seeing so like we're above it but the eye line is there. It's like we're a little it's almost like we're a dog, like looking at this environment or something. So we should see it. Yeah, yeah. This is tricky to explain. I hope this communicates a little bit, but that it is just inherently hard. If we had a longer session, I could definitely go into this, but yeah, nonetheless. So basically, long story short, more work with perspective, definitely. Um, Okay, this is cool. Your characters are probably too big. A fun environment though. It's kind of funny actually. Uh, too much of it is decorative. Too much of it is like this stuff. And it's funny because I had another student who did an underwater scene who had the same problem. They just filled it with coral and like I don't know where the ground plane is here. Like I can't really tell like where the ground there's just stuff everywhere. This is very tricky. No problem, Charlotte. Take care. I hope that was helpful. Um, but yeah, the ground plane is just vague. I don't see where one thing ends and the background begins, and then we've got some like real line quality issues back there, which kind of could be intentional, but it seems a bit unintentional. It seems more like dust or mist. I would have spaced yourself out a bit more, like, and been more clear about the ground planes and diversified the ground planes a little bit and had landscapes in the background and there's definitely a bunch of things you could do here. Yeah, I can guarantee you lost a lot of marks here. So, yeah, I think the long story short is, Dana, you definitely need to practice perspective more. Um, if you want to hear more about that, I got some classes on perspective, but I'm not gonna push anything right now. Okay, hands. What did you get on your hands? You got pretty, this is not you. Is that you? Nope. Do you remember, Dana? What did you get on your hands? 7. Okay, sure. Um, Well, the first thing I can tell you is the line quality is a little loud, or just the texture generally. Probably could have been cleaned up a fair bit. Um, I like your first hand pose. It's not too bad, even though we're missing a lot of fingers. It would have been great to see some fingers bending through that space. That would have been nice. Um, this feels a little smooth. So here's the thing with hands. Because we have areas that are bony and fleshy and muscly, you want to see the distinct differences between those different areas very clearly. That's kind of what form and structure is, right? Your thumb currently feels a little flooby nooby. It has this kind of like it would have been good to emphasize the knuckles a little bit, the bones a little bit more, so it wasn't so like just wavy. You did this a lot better in your index finger. That's great. And you included the ulna. Really nice. I probably wouldn't have cut off your hand like that. I would have just faded it out, really. Yeah, just a little noisy, and the pictures are not great either. They're kind of pixelated. Um, yeah, I wouldn't straighten all the fingers. Like when you're tossing, maybe one or two is going to be straight, but then the other ones are probably going to be a little bent, realistically. So it feels just a little bit like too static. And I think we need more palm here as well. It feels like there's not enough palm before the fingers begin. So yeah, definitely there's some issues here. Okay. And then your storyboard, which you did really well on. So okay, so the fox lemonade stand. Okay. Um, yeah, okay. I don't buy that story dynamic of that he didn't see the city before. It feels a bit contrived. It feels like the only reason that's the case is because you change the camera angle. This kind of dynamic happens in Walking Dead all the time. Um, and yes, Micah, absolutely. You can use the same piece again if you get a great mark on something. Uh, I have seen marks drop though, but they won't compare it to your last year. It's just it's a different set of eyes. So just make sure that you're really comfortable and confident in it. But yes, absolutely. So yeah, basically, Dana, I would say you don't need these two shots. Like you just do one of these shots, and you could do both of those things in one easily. Um, and then sure, then you have him walk into the city. And then you have this. This shot could be a little more dynamic. It feels a bit odd in the perspective. That's a giant street. Like that should be closer to us. So the horizon line is way too far back, and it feels a bit static back there. So yeah, basically, Dana, the long story short is I think you need a little more work with like perspective and structure and yeah, I guess anatomy and hand stuff too. So have a look at some of the this hand is also very odd. Um, yeah. It should really realistically be over here because we need distance for the palm to occur. It's just happening right at the end of that wrist. So, yeah, I think you just need a little more training, a little more work in certain areas. You could book a free portfolio review, and we could have a quick session to go over some of this. But yeah, okay. Anyways, let's keep going. Um, Danielle, you're here. I saw you earlier. At least, are you here now? Yes, you are. Great.
Yeah, still here.
Awesome. Um, all right, figures, hands, and an HEIC file that I can open. Um, okay, yes, figures and hands. That is what we wanted to. Personal. Yeah, I remember we talked about this before, and
Yeah, I just ran out of time. It's
yeah,
not
for sure.
a
Well,
lot.
it sucks. Okay, so okay, you got a big arm up there. That's like if we compare that arm to this arm, it's a pretty big difference. Um, This leg feels a little bit compressed at the bottom. The foot feels like it's all just being shoved together a little bit. I like the structure of the torso and the upper body, and then it loosens a little bit there, and here it feels a little less tight. And up here, it's getting a little silhouette-y. Uh, your focus is just a little bit on the exterior line versus like the movement through the overall form. That would be easy to demonstrate with looking at some of the very high marked portfolios. Okay, I like this one. Oh, okay, but that leg is much, much smaller than this thigh. Like, look at the thigh difference, right? So that's pretty stark. The feet are a little different sizes too, and this one's a little too pulled out longer. Which weirdly, it looks in okay proportion with this leg, but then you see it compared to the other leg, and you're like, ah, okay. Love the torso. This work is great right in there. Really nice. You got the iliac crest, got a little bit of the ribs. Really nice. Um, this is a gesture, right? Yeah, I think so. Um, yeah. Yeah, it's starting to feel a little sharp up there. It should be a little rounder for the shoulder. The shoulder is usually quite round at the top. Um, okay. Yeah, I remember looking at this one. I do like this one. If anything, I think the legs, the whole lower trunk just needs to be longer, basically. Like it seems like right now the arms are almost like chimpanzee hand arms, where like it feels like she could almost reach to the ground. Or at least the arms are at least the length of the legs, if not longer. They're quite big. And we need a little more. You've got the collarbones and that's good. We need a little more solid. Like I think just like volume. I think we just need it's almost like we need to stick a pump in there and just like pump up the shoulders a little bit. Their feeling is just slightly deflated weirdly because the rest of the body feels relatively well formed and a good kind of moderation of fat and muscle. So yeah, a little odd. Wait a second. So these are your okay. Wait, that's a long pose. That's your second gesture. Okay, interesting. So this should be a little more refined. For long pose, you should definitely get a little more of the face. And honestly, if it's like a 10 minute and you're out of time, add more after, right? Because you can have up to 20 minutes. You can touch it
I think
up.
this was just a 5.
Yeah, shoot. Yeah. I mean, I believe it, but yeah, more time would have been great. Also to slow it down so that those the legs could be a little more similar, but um okay, so I like a lot of this, really. Hmm. Well, I can tell you right off the bat that thumb is too big. I would love to, and you're getting some, this is very unfortunate. This is just like a scanning or photo issue, but you've got a lot more structure in there, but it's all blown out. It's almost like you had to kind of go over it after, maybe even digitally or something, and get it back. It's not ideal. Like there's quite a mound. Oh, I see. The mound is sort of done. Yeah. Something's going on here. Um, I like the compression of the skin over there. Something's going on with the structure in the palm itself. It's almost like this from here to there is very long, and then the other side is super short. And I feel like maybe that's just a bit too dramatic. The length and then the shortness of the far side. Um, and then there's this structure, which is kind of like unfortunately giving away this. Because see this, we see all perfectly in a row in a line, but then this is like three-quarter front view, right? So that's yeah, yeah. I mean you can rotate to a certain degree, but only so much before the wrist would kind of break. So there's definitely something going on with the rotation in the wrist. Um, and then this distance feels a bit dramatic. And then the wrist generally seems a little bit big. Just versus the ratio of the hand. Like that's what I'm talking about. Just a little bit less. And then I think we need more palm. So probably by making more palm on that side, then we reduce the wrist size a little bit. So then it's a little more in cohesion. Um, and okay, I can see the HIC. So you got a bit of a point up there. This thumb is a little bit odd. It's not too far, but we need a flatter top. Um, this is where a photo could betray you a little bit because sometimes it can make this feel a bit distorted and you're guessing at these different volumes a bit more. But round that more and kind of give a little more volume to the front here. Um, yeah, these are not helping to form too much, these kind of lines. We need to see the silhouette be somewhat affected by those. Um, There's some finger, these two fingers are getting a little tiny back there versus these two. I know that it's going back in space and it should get a little bit smaller, but the nails are just like shrinking by like a quarter of the size. So that's just a bit dramatic. In fact, these two fingers generally seem a little too small. Um, the wrist here looks great. That works with the hand. Yeah, okay. So some proportional things. And then I got your HIC here. Um, Just it's a little stiff. You're drawing a bit. It's like you're carving into the paper. You need to lighten your stroke a little bit, and use a nice amount of the sharp edge of the Conte when you wear it down, and then also some softness. Like you've got mostly soft strokes here. You need to build up the volumes gradually with those soft strokes, and then only in brief little areas do you come back in with with a sharp edge to kind of right now it feels very a little more uniform and that's stiffening it a little bit. If we look at like any of the very top mark life drawing, we'll see this demonstrated. Yeah, right. So exactly. So we see the structure is soft in where it is soft, but then there's muscles and bones that are harder, right? So and then the lines on the exterior were tightened a little bit. Um, so yeah, some soft stroke, hard stroke, and a little tighter. See, with a tighter stroke, you get a little bit more precision, and then just a little more structure and kind of overlapping forms. That's the other thing. Um, but you do have a good amount of overlap. You're absolutely you're getting there. The hands could be a little bit less like boxy, I guess, like with the fingers just it just kills the flow a little bit. This feels a bit dramatic. The angle, it's a bit acute. Um, could be a little more gradual, probably. The feet seem a decent size for the weight. The head also feels slightly distorted. Like if I were to bring this into Photoshop, I feel like what kind of needs to happen is oh, can't open HEIC files. Never mind. Well, it just needs to be pulled in the upper left area, so it's a little less skewed. Um, okay. Dana, you don't really need an object being. I mean, I guess you should draw an object being thrown because that's what it says in the thing. But I've seen people that don't really show the object in the second pose, and that's fine. Rafa, you're here. Okay, that's my cousin's name, so you can go. You're our last student tonight. Okay, Rafa. Um,
Yay!
yeah. 88. Wow. Okay, so you did pretty well. Whenever we get into like the 86s, 87s, 88s, I'm like, all right, where are the marks lost here? It's looking pretty good to me. Ah, storyboard. Okay. Yeah, and of course the storyboard's here. Okay, so yeah. Shoot. So the first shot, again, like it could be a more dynamic view of the fox. And the arm is too thin. It's too thin generally, I think, actually. It has a lot more puffiness to it. Um, And yeah, the profile. I'm really fussy about dead on profiles, everyone. Like, if anything, give us a tiny little eyelash and a little eyebrow around the other side, and then suddenly it's slightly less of a profile. You can make it like not just a dead on profile, because again, that's one of the poses they give you. So they're gonna yeah, and I don't know if they love that. I've seen that before in a previous year in what was a wonderful storyboard, and they clearly didn't like it because I guess what they want you to do is to draw it with just the effect, not two poses. So draw some like lines, just like lines of the hand moving, and then the little speed line that you have there. That would have been better. But yeah, not my favorite shot, honestly. And I also just don't know. It's hard to locate where they are. It'd be better to like see parts of the bed or something. It's not a great layout to kind of demonstrate that shot. Wow, ambitious. This is that is an ambitious shot. I see what you're doing here. So she's on top of the bed now, looking down at her. I would not have done that straight on like that. That is dancing with fire here. Any other way, I don't know, like propping themselves up and looking behind them or something. Um, that is, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I
good,
definitely
really
think
good.
I could do better, but I was so tired, so yeah, I gave
Sure.
up.
I mean, really, I got to give it to you, Rafa. Amazing attempt for like trying to get it under. I don't know of anyone else that's attempted the fox from that angle. So, some certain props for that, but I probably there's a reason we don't see the fox from that angle very much, right? So, um, okay. Yeah, well, that hamster was there the whole time, though, right? Yeah.
I actually forgot to draw it in the first shot.
Oh, yeah. Um, yeah, and almost straight on, right? With the body's entirely behind the pose. So the biggest thing here is posing. I'm seeing like the posing is just too stiff, too dead on, too straight side, straight under. It's almost like you're drawing like the top front of like a 3D model or something, like the different. This is probably your most dynamic view. But then you're losing in some other areas. It feels a little, you really thin the fox out. They're a little beefier, especially the arms. And I don't quite understand what the layout's doing here. It looks like she's floating. Yeah, I literally don't understand what's happening here. So, It doesn't feel like she's leaning on the bed, if that's what you're meaning to do. So, yeah, yeah, I'd say, okay, to be honest, Rafa, I just want to be totally honest, just in case you were to like reapply next year. I think they were actually a little generous with your mark. Okay.
Yeah,
I know that
I
sets the,
also think that that was why I wanted to look for like
yeah.
an opinion because I also felt that.
Sure. Okay. I say that only because sometimes like people will have like an 18 out of 20 on their storyboard and they're like, oh, I'm using the same storyboard. Well, you couldn't use the same storyboard next year because there'd be a different prompt. But say there was a case where you got 14 out of 15 on your character design, but it's kind of like it's always good to get another opinion because I've seen a 14 out of 15 drop to a 12 out of 15 the next year. So that's why I'm like slightly cautious about that. Um, but yeah, I think in this case, I think you kind of lucked out. But nonetheless, okay, let's see your other stuff. What was your perspective mark again? 14. Okay. Okay. Yeah. It works. It does work. You could have done a lot more with this story, I would say. Like, it's actually kind of hilarious that you have like this witch. What this looks like to me is like a witch was like put into like she was like rehomed and she had to get into like a sub and she was moved to a suburb or something and out of her like little cottage that's like out in the woods and she's now in the suburb and she still has all her witchy things, but she's kind of hates it.
Yeah, it was
So.
something like that.
Okay. First of all, who sees the tangent? Who sees it? Anybody? Look at this tangent right here. Oh boy, right on the hat. That's not great. Yeah, easy one to fix. Easy one to fix, but whew, that's a bad tangent. Okay. But otherwise, yeah, really the perspective, it does work. Oh, geez, another tangent. I can't unsee it. There it is right there. Watch out for the, oh, and over here. Oh, geez. Okay. Yeah, watch out for those tangents. Oh, and there's tangent here too. Okay, so you got a few tangents right there. Oh boy. Okay, what is this? Like a sport now? See the paper with that line. You're a little bit in Tangentville, Rafa. Um, Okay, not too bad now. I don't see any more. Okay, good. The light didn't go right to the corner. That's good. So things like that you got to watch out for. But honestly, like I think this would have been a bit better to actually put her in a witchy cabin, like because the story, it's just why is she in a suburb? Like if she is, then make her have destroyed this place. Make her have like drawn like the witch's or like the satanic star on the floor or like burnt it into the ground or something. And then there's like a I don't know, all these hanging like weird creatures that are drying out or so. I just you got to amp up the weirdness. Your weirdness is at like a 3 out of 10 for what could have been like a 9 or 10 out of 10 on the weirdness scale. And what I really mean by weirdness is the story. The story should be more vibrant. The suburb is killing the vibe of the story. But that said, you're executing perspective well. So you're on your way, but you need to. I think this story could have been more amped up. It's animation, right? Amp up the story as much as you can in every single piece you do. Okay. Your hand. Like, what did you get on your hands? 8 out of 10. Okay. Oh boy, the image quality here is one mark right away. Um, the other mark is the size of this pinky. And and so this is clearly a photo from a camera or from a cell phone or something because it's getting this like if those fingers feel like they're being sucked into a black hole like it feels like they're way too small considering the size of the hand. um Oh, I see. We'll see, Rachel. I'll try to look at yours on the way out. So yeah, the sizes of certain things here. Um, it also doesn't quite connect these poses. On all the ones that I see that are top marks, the poses are like this or something. You're doing like facing, and then suddenly it turns and throws. It's like almost like two different things going on here. So, um, but I like your first hand. That's a little stronger for sure. And you did well on this one, I remember. You got, yeah, 14 out of 15. Why'd you bring this one? But it's isometric. So again, the feet are in perspective. The feet are great. What isn't great? The glasses. They're level. They shouldn't be level. They should be at an angle. Everything should be the shoulder should be at an angle. nothing like you did the chest at an angle. See that? So why are the glasses then straight on? Like that's a horizontal line. Even the cup, we see the top of the cup, right? That implies that it's in perspective. So the glasses need to, yeah, and no, okay, don't love that. It's nice to see a little bit of the front or the back or something. It's very rarely 100% facing the viewer. Um, okay, really hilarious, but okay, yeah. I mean, your last one, Mark, is probably somewhere in there. Okay, Rachel, I'm gonna have a quick look at your background just because I want to see your story too. So, how did you do? 5 minutes past, but this is fun. Oh boy, 11. Okay, so not great. Wait, what did you do overall? 78. Okay. So again, really not bad. Honestly, in my year, you would have got in. How shocking is that? That was the passing grade back then. The passing grade of my year was 76. What a different time. I feel ancient. Okay. So perspectives. Ah, the line, the line inconsistency. Um, Not bad though, but you're right. Okay, here's what it feels like. This is like sort of a maybe Mayan or Aztec or something. Is that kind of your intention?
Yeah, a little bit.
So you're like you're like halfway there, sort of, in terms of fully developing that story. Um, you have some cool elements, and then other areas that I'm like, oh wow, it would have been great to like do more with this. So yeah, I like your character pose is good, but again, watch the if you ever scale things up, everybody, just be careful to do the line again. It's not a good look to have some soft, some and this big line right there. What's going on there? So yeah, but really, like you clearly understand perspective. Again, like a lot of you are getting it. It's just like you need to fully develop that like have more things that are not according to the grid. Like this, I really like this bag. Like that bag is not according to the grid. Great. But have more things that are a little oblong. And on that note, all of you should be using Lazy Nezumi in Photoshop. It's so much easier to do perspective because I told you I would talk about this, but here's a little plug for Lazy Nezumi, which is going to be in the links of this video when it's on YouTube. So let's turn Lazy Nezumi on for a second because you got to see this. It's so how it is, how it works. You set up your perspective like any other perspective ruler, like probably many of you used, which is great. So you get your room, whatever. Um, let's have something else going on. There's like a little hallway back there. Sure. So immediately, see everyone who didn't use a perspective ruler is just like, what is this magic right now? Um, and then, okay, so that's the ground, and then the corner over there, and then, yeah, I don't know, do something like that. This is another thing I wish people did more is just like made more interesting room like bones to begin with. Like make the room weird, make it's animation, like just go nuts. Like, and then there's a door here. I don't know. There's like just keep going. Don't worry about the frame yet. Just kind of go for it. This is what I tell all my students. Um, okay, and then now finally we can come back around and have that and then solve for X over here and like you could do so much more when the room is more like interesting, right? It's like, oh, cool, weird. Okay, what I was gonna say is with lazy and zooming, once you've got your perspective the way you want and you've started, you can save it. You can save this perspective view. And then guess what? Based on the field of view, which is kind of it's going to be too long to explain that. But basically, the field of view determines the relationship between the 2 points of perspective. You know how in Clip Studio and Procreate, you can make each of the points move independently of one another? That should not be the case. The field of view should dictate where each of those points are. So notice how as soon as, so here's one box or chair or something in this environment, right? So here it is, and this is currently moving, drawn according to the perspective of the room. But we don't want everything to be according to the perspective. So turning things is always such a pain for everyone, right? So watch this. So this, I saved it. So now I can rotate it. And notice how when I rotate the one line, the other one moves too. That is what you want in a perspective ruler. You shouldn't just be able to move the points arbitrarily. That's waiting for disaster. So now I could draw this turned object. And I know that it works in this perspective because the field of view is the same and the horizon line, the view radius is the same. Everything else is good to go. And then I can do another thing and move that one too, right? So this is this is a more comprehensive perspective ruler that you really should be using next year when you reapply. And then when I'm done doing turned objects, I discard and it goes, uh, oh, I didn't save it, did I? Well, usually when you save it, it goes back here and it kind of, I could easily find it again. But yeah, I totally didn't save it. I thought I did, but I guess I didn't click it hard enough. But you know, you just go back and then it's like, okay, that's, yeah, it's not perfect. But nonetheless, normally you don't save it badly like I did. Yeah, it's all messed up. But you discard and then it goes right back to your original perspective. So it's super awesome. Rachel, you have a question.
Yeah, I think the program's really cool. I just use Procreate because I use an iPad for this, so I
Sure.
that works for that. But yeah,
Yeah, and most people do. Most people do. I'm just letting everyone know that Procreate and Clip Studio and other even Krita, the different perspective rulers generally are quite lacking. They're very minimal. It's just like you put them there and then that's it. But you shouldn't just be able to put them there. There's a huge consideration to be had here. Um, when you are setting up your perspective of considering, do you want a wide angle lens like this one, the 120-degree field of view, or a sort of telescopic lens zoomed in from far away, which is this one up here. This is as if you're looking across a river at something a fair distance away. This is as if you're in a tight room and you want to show a lot. Neither of these is wrong. This one seems wrong. It's just distorted. That's fine. And you see this in animation all the time. You can choose your field of view intentionally to get the best background possible. Okay, so that's what I want to say about lazy Nezumi, and I'm glad I remembered it. Um, okay, I like this one better, Rachel. Your line
to
work
be
is still
honest,
all
me
over the
too.
place, but sorry.
Me too. I like this one more.
Great. Yeah, this is and it feels connected weirdly. So yeah, not bad. Watch again, your line quality is kind of all over the place. And you have these little detail clusters and then very open space elsewhere. I would have detailed the rocks a little bit more here to kind of compare with this stuff to then contrast with the rocks of the background because it seems like the rocks of the background are almost similarly the texture density is similar to the foreground. Just more stuff in the foreground. Also, you can have some okay, just one thing here. With water, to make water not feel soupy, it's nice to see a little bit through it, you know? It's like you might have some ripples and stuff like that, but you can still draw some stuff down there. You can have some rocks. Like, yeah, you see, a ripple will interrupt that, but you can still of course I'm drawing in the background layer. Yeah, like we should see more of this, right? It's gonna feel very soupy if we don't, except where there's like some splashing going on or something. Bonus points for like, ooh, you know, you could even one little trick here. So say that's it, right? You can again another Photoshop thing, but probably there's equivalent in everything else. Um, you could even like liquefy it here. I don't love doing this. I'd rather just draw it in personally, but you can do stuff like that and just have it feel like it's kind of underwater. Yeah, see, that sucks. It's better just to draw it. Um, yeah, not bad though. Not bad texturing. Yeah, don't mind it, Rachel. Uh, let's see your storyboard while we're here. Okay. Side. Yeah. Well, you know what I'm gonna say about side views. I just don't like it. They're just not super dynamic. Like this one's much more dynamic. You kind of need to draw the fluff. You kind of missed the line right there. Like it needs to be a little bit more evident. Um, okay, great face. Like the face. It's a bit tight. And it looks like it's a low angle shot if we look at the chicken as if it were the chicken looking up, but then it's actually a high angle shot. Um, that's not the worst thing. This is a beautiful pose, but it's a little off model. The angle of the face would dictate that the nose would absolutely block that eye, probably. So you snug the nose in, so the nose is really really tight. It's just a little muzzle, little tiny muzzle. Um, Beautiful character, but not really the fox in the face, in my opinion. This is hilarious though. You're having some more line quality issues here. Um, Yeah, a little bit more of a human shoulders. The fox doesn't really have shoulders. If you look at the fox carefully, it just comes right out from here. It's like, as far as we're concerned, it's like this. That's it. So it's not really much of a bulk to that shoulder, right? Um, Not a bad drawing though. It's just yeah, it's Rachel, were you rushed in your portfolio? Because I feel like you can do this. I just feel like you might have ran out of time.
So I'm still in high school, and so I still had like work to do. Like
Yeah.
especially I was just rushed and just had math and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. That's what it feels like. It feels like you could have done a lot better on this with a little more time. That's what it feels like. Just a little bit more thorough working with the shots and such. How'd you do on that? So yeah, I'd say that's about right. Um, Character rotation is a 12. Yeah, okay. Um, Seems a bit harsh for that. Um, 12, eh? Wow. How's your GPA, Rachel? And again, if you don't want to mention, don't feel like.
So honestly, still in high school, really good. So it definitely wasn't that. It was definitely
Huh.
the portfolio.
Okay. I kind of like this character design. I like the contrast between the puffiness of the coat and the thin little wrists. Um, okay, the legs are a little stiff. Like you can do see the little it's a bit graphic. Like you could get a little more structure in the butt here and in the legs generally. Like you can do sticks, but you can do sticks in a structured way. It's a subtle difference, but um I love the face. I like the face and it's pretty consistent as far as I can tell. Yeah, it's not neutral. Your line quality is a bit all over the place. There's thick lines here and then thin lines here. So that's one big thing. Oh, this is like a back view. Yeah, we should definitely see. I mean, look how far his nose is here, right? So that's maybe a little, the helmet is a little over halfway, but to not see any of the face whatsoever is like that's basically a back view. So this is the same problem as that one earlier. Um, is that it's too much of a back view, not enough of the side view in the back three-quarter. Okay. Um, is this your first time applying, Rachel?
Yeah.
Definitely reapply. I think you'll be great.
I
Um,
just have a quick question though. Do you
yeah.
think it's worth going to fundamentals to
The question of the hour, isn't it? Everyone's asking this in the Discord too. Who's going to art fundamentals just to get a show of hands? Or who's thinking about it, at least? Micah, Rachel, anyone else? Okay. Um, I have mixed feelings about art fundamentals. I did it. I did art fundamentals first, and it well, I mean, everyone knows this, but like the classes aren't really built for you to like get into animation, if that makes sense. Like it's not like it's like animation fundamentals, like my course. Um, it's a broad range of different classes, and some of them are relevant, like layout, or there's a perspective class, and then there's a life drawing class. And the nice thing, honestly, the best thing about art fundamentals is the friends you meet that are going to help you and be peers with you as you're also applying with them. A lot of the people in art fundamentals are applying to Sheridan for animation or illustration. So that's great, is to be among people that are doing that. Another thing that's great is access to so much life drawing. That's huge. Um, Whether it's like $5,700 if you're domestic huge is another question. Like I feel like it was a little overpriced in terms of the courses. I like the life drawing, I like the peers, but for me personally, where I was at in my life at that point in time, like I don't know. I wish something like what I do existed. That's why I created this, right? Like I mentor students and I like try to give them an alternative to going to art fundamentals. That's entirely what created my business really of tutoring students. So like I don't know. And like the amount of one-on-one time you get with teachers, that's the other thing, right? That's the other thing that I'm trying to kind of like one up of art fundamentals basically is that you get so little time with the students. Um, Yeah, sorry, Rachel, $20 per session. Oh, and like a local life drawing. Oh, sure. Yeah. Where are you based, Rachel? Or feel you don't have to mention that if you where?
Hamilton?
Hamilton. Oh, we got Danielle's from Hamilton too. Maybe both can go to life drawing. Well, yeah, like I think there is some life drawing there's definitely life drawing in and around that area, that's for sure. And yeah, but
Dundas
20,
Valley
sorry,
and Dundas Valley has life drawing as well as Cotton Factory, and there's one on Sunday in the middle of Hamilton as well.
amazing. That's great. That's better than like all of Singapore. I can tell you because I've had students from Singapore. Um, so yeah, like $20 a session is great when you consider like how much art fundamentals costs. That's how I feel about art fundamentals. So if money isn't really much of an issue for you or your family and you just want to go somewhere and be among students that are doing it, then sure. But like just be aware you're not going to get that money's worth in terms of the coursework you're doing. That's all that I would say about it. Not trying to diss fundamentals. It's a great place for many people to be, especially after high school. It starts to get your work ethic a bit more serious. You start to treat yourself a little more professionally. You're on your own, you're living on your own, well, which is another potential downside if you're paying for that. So yeah, there's a lot to consider there. There's a lot to consider. If you got into Seneca, I would much rather have you do that and then reapply to Sheridan next year. That's what a lot of people do. Like do at least that's in animation. You're doing life drawing for animation. It's like relevant. Um, so yeah, those are my thoughts. I hope they're helpful. Okay, so we'll end here now. But also, is there any questions? If anyone just has questions, I absolutely could still answer some while you're all here.
Yeah, I just had a question. So you showed the hand drawing, but you didn't like say what was bad about because my hand drawing I did not do well.
Sure. What did you get on them again?
Like,
Well, the line quality was rough. That's one thing I can tell you right off the bat. It was just very, very thick and large and like it looks like you did it with like almost like a Sharpie marker or something. The other thing is that I see some digital strokes here. Um,
yeah,
Honestly, don't recommend it. It's dancing with fire yet again. It's like it's just risky, you know. If they notice that, and they might, they're not gonna. They say it should be traditional. So, I like this thumb, but I honestly I think your line quality is kind of shooting you in the foot because where you could have had more structure to kind of like insert this joint into the next joint of the thumb, it's just one thick line. So you're losing structure because of the thickness. Um, it's not hugely out of proportion. See, we might have seen some nails, but the line is just like thick as anything. So very, very thick. And a little, yeah, it's not too bad. There's just more structure. Like you drew grids, but I want to see some like skin. I want to see the skin doing stuff. Like, um, yeah, they might have been a bit harsh. It could have been a seven. But yeah, and no shading or anything like that, especially with digital strokes. They might have got caught onto you that it was digital, but or at least like partially. So those are my thoughts, Rachel. Hope that helps a bit. We got some more questions in the chat. Looks like maybe uh Salad has to go. Take care, Salad. Storyboard and layouts. Do props have a preference for using tones in your drawings? I haven't. Okay, so use tonals if it helps the composition work and be clear, but don't rely on the tonals to do the work for you. And if anything, that your darkest dark should be like a 50% gray. It should not be super dark, especially not black. That's definitely a no-no. But the line work should do it. Back in my old days when I applied, it was only line work, no tonal at all. No one was allowed to do that. So the line work had to speak for itself. And I think that's still a good way to work. But I do like the tonals personally. I think you can get some effects in there. You can get some mist. You can do stuff like that. It's kind of nice. But it's probably not going to honestly change your mark that much. Um, but I do like tonals. Tonals help clarify the background. Um, Shading and figure drawing is okay. Um, Sorry, I'm just going to show you some of my figure drawing because some of it is totally rendered, but it's not in a way that like um, makes it. Oh shoot, I can't get into it. So okay, here's some of my recent figure drawing. So do you see how soft these tonals are? Like, do you see how the line work is really doing everything for this drawing? Like it's not yeah. Like the line work is the dominant thing here. You can still see the lines inside the tonals. So the tonals, like you can use a simplified shading technique, which I describe in a lot of my videos, where you kind of add the dark shadow line and then lighter on the in the shadowed area. Um, so yeah, like I'll use tonals occasionally, but only really to help the form that's already there. Okay, so um, yeah, so this is a longer pose, and also I'm not in animation, so I can do whatever I want. So I'm adding a little bit more tone than you should here. But yeah, like j I just use tone occasionally, like to help the form a little bit. But this first one was the best example of like you can have tonal, but don't let it overwhelm your line. Some people darken it so much that you can't see the line anymore. That's not great. Okay, that's a great question though. Really good. Um, okay, any other questions? Great questions, everyone, all throughout.
Yeah, I just have a question. In
Sure.
terms of like personal artwork, are they looking for like less rendered stuff? Because I know my personal artwork, like it wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great either.
Sure.
My usual style is a little bit more rendered. Do they want like more cartoony stuff in personal artwork or?
Not necessarily. I've seen people with some very rendered, basically illustrations that did pretty well. I wouldn't do only that as your personal. Have a certain amount of breadth, like have maybe some animation or have like layouts, concept artwork, visual development. Pitch Bibles are wonderful. Like if you have a story, do the characters, describe the story a little bit. Give us a little sentence or two about the characters. Different facial expressions, different po character poses that show their personality. A little food truck that they visited, or like a little location in the story, and little buildings and vehicle designs. There's so many things in that needs to be designed in animation that would be great to include in like a sort of, I call it a pitch Bible or a pitch package that is basically like, hey, here network, make my thing. There's so much artwork that you need to create for those kinds of pitches. So thinking about that, I mean, any art outbook will show you them, right? They show you all the kinds of things that need to be designed. They're pretty much looking for that. That's the more closer you can get to that, the better. You could do a storyboard, you could do a color script, um, some animation, some 3D modeling if you're there yet, but you don't have to ever be. But yeah, like there's so much stuff you can do for personal. Just to, I didn't want to do any of this, but the reason that I want to show you this actually is because I'm making a whole bunch of the short little classes, like 4-week classes, specifically to help students fill out their personal work. So like a lot of this, like sketching, like imaginative sketching, observational sketching, visual development, composition, these kind of subjects are really just to tease out your personal work because that's what it's going to give you. In composition, you're going to do a whole bunch of little compositional thumbnails. And guess what? You're going to present those nicely and you're going to make those into personal work. That's kind of the whole idea of all of these little short courses is to help the personal work not just be thrown into the end of well, my animation fundamentals 2 course, which is the second half of the portfolio, but there's never enough time for the personal work. The personal work always needs more time. You can start on your personal work right now and carry it through till next February, right? Like there's long-term art projects that you should get started. Like if you really want to get in, you should start now. Even if it means redoing some pieces later, you should do that. That's it is like my personal, totally like non-filtered perspective of this is that the students that are getting accepted now are sharks. Like these folks are ready for the industry. Like I don't know what they're going to Sheridan for, but the skill level has risen so much over the years that if you want to compete with that, then like yeah, just start now and work. And another thing that many students have told me, especially that had high light drawing marks, is that they did consistent light drawing for like 6 months to a year. So they did light drawing like once or twice a week for that much time. They had so much light drawing to choose from at the end. Um, I hugely recommend that. Yeah. So. Is personal art mostly about variety or is it about storytelling, showing hobbies? What do you mean by showing hobbies, Dane? I don't quite understand that. But absolutely, it's about storytelling. Variety is nice, except if it means you're having to make so much variety that you're showing art that isn't good anymore because you're not very practiced in it. That's too much variety. So restrict to things you're more comfortable with. You only want to show your best work, but if your best work can be a little bit broader than just digital paintings, great. Definitely great. And all of it should involve storytelling, honestly. There shouldn't be a single personal artwork that doesn't in some way demonstrate storytelling or like something unique and interesting. Silkscreen printing. If the imagery that you're silkscreen printing is engaging enough to be sort of relevant to animation, then yes. If it's too, maybe send me a DM of your work, Micah, of what you mean. Is it's very relevant among. Here's one thing they don't like. They, especially for the high school folks out there, they don't like when the work is clearly like a school assignment. If they get a little whiff of school assignment, they do not like that. Some kind of weird, abstract, fine arty MFA type strangeness that you would have done in art class from your very explorative art teacher. That is not the time for this. This is like classical, rigorous drawing. Like this is, yeah, it's you'd have better luck going to like at one of the ateliers around the world, like the Watts Atelier, and doing like 6 months of like hard figure drawing, head block-ins, shading, sculpture drawings, stuff like that would be better than any of your high school art educations. Literally any of them. Okay. Yeah, oil paintings could be relevant, especially if it's like a landscape, figures, things like that. That's not bad. But again, that's relevant for animation, right? That makes sense. Okay, folks are dropping off. So maybe just like one more question. Does anyone have a question? Anyone that hasn't asked anything? Do you want to ask any questions? Like you can type it. Let's hear some from some of the quiet folks. All right, it seems like we're good. Everyone's good. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for coming. I hope you learned a bunch. If you have any questions about what I do as an animation tutor, just reach out. I'm always around in the server. You see my name all the time, and I hope this was helpful. And it'll be on YouTube, so you can see it there too. All right. Awesome. Take care, everybody. See ya.